Alright, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on a new episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week on the Music Reviewer podcast for the week of April 17th. My name's Josh, and thanks for joining me. And this is a weekly segment, if you're new, that I do on this podcast where I take all new entries onto the Billboard Hot 100 and give them all a letter grade and take one that's the worst and take one that's the best. That's all it is. But anyways, cool week this week. A lot of new, interesting artists, and just overall pretty diverse. It's one of those weeks where I think there's a mixed bag of a lot of quality and then some not so much. But it was worthwhile, I think, compared to other weeks. Some of the artists like Taylor Swift, Duncan, Laurence, a newer one, BTS. Roddy, Ricch is in here. So is Demi Lovato, Ariana, Grande, little Tjay. Olivia, Rodrigo. So if any of those artists interest you, go ahead and stick around for the rest of this episode. I'll be covering some tracks from them. Alright, so first track up is from Duncan Laurence with Arcade at 100. First time I've ever heard of this artist. He's from Europe. He won this contest called Eurovision. I guess that's a pretty nice accomplishment. This track was the track he won the contest with. But overall, the track is pretty melodramatic, and the more and more it progresses, pretty utilization of falsetto all throughout the track. Although I don't really fuck with the snap track substituted in for percussion, all of that chain smoker bullshit. Some pretty cheesy arcade references all throughout. Granted, I don't think English is his first language, but this track is kind of old, from around 2019. And it's kind of just been hanging around, trying to pop into the Billboard Hot 100, apparently, because it's been big pretty much all over the world, I guess. There is a big climatic moment aided by some dramatic percussive elements finally coming in a bit over the top at the end of the track, but it's kind of just very Imagine Dragons levels of being forced. I don't know. The track was just a little inconsistent, and not too pleasing at times. I give it a C. Next track, Mr. Perfectly Fine, Taylor Swift's version at 90, by Taylor Swift. This is another single coming off of that Taylor's version Fearless album that came out not too long ago. There's a clear and bright charm to this track. Some lightly balanced acoustic guitar textures just under the synths and the vocals that give the track a nice layered quality to it, to where everything just sounds so clear, nothing is too buried or anything. And what I like about this track, it just keeps the same energy and youthfulness to Taylor's earlier work that she has kind of lost as she's moved to more standard pop production and pop aesthetics. It's a pretty organic song overall, nicely done. I gave it a B+. Next track, Film Out by BTS at 81. Can't say this is one of the better tracks or even above average or average tracks I've heard from BTS. This is a very interesting song for them. It's very piano-centric. It's a bit mellowed out. And immediately are greeted with this buttery, smooth vocal tone from most of them when they come in the group. That gives the track like a lush and husky texture, especially when they all harmonize together. But I will say, like, the way it's structured and how the song's composed, there's this weird brief rap verse that's interesting. But I'm not exactly sure why it's even thrown in the song, though. It doesn't really make much sense in the grand context of this track. And the drum production just sounds a bit too thin overall as the track later develops towards the climax at the end. And that kind of just cheapens the effect it was going for. The build-up doesn't really have much payoff. So I was very meh on this track to give it a B-. Next track is For the Gang by 42 Dugg and Roddy Ricch at 67. First time ever covering this artist, 42 Dugg. Seems like every other week that's the case on Best and Worst Track of the Week. We just always go with it. He sounds like City Girls. His delivery, his flow, it just sounds like them. On this track, the sub bass is pretty damn overbearing at times. And not to say that can't be done, but on this track, it really doesn't work because the sample that they're using is the only interesting part. It's from like an old Scorpions track, and it's just muffled. They could have brought that out a much more, since that's literally the only thing making the instrumental interesting, except they choose to overblow the mix with some deep sub bass. But Roddy does make the track admittedly much better, but it's kind of like polishing a turd. It really doesn't work out. So I gave this track a C. Next track, Dancing with the Devil by Demi Lovato at 56. This is one of two tracks that made it off her latest album. And this is, you'll see later, this is one of the weaker ones, the weaker of the two. The track aims to have like this smoky and sultry nature. I could have done without the weak sounding percussive elements used in like this pre-chorus, chorus thing that the track kind of builds up to. The track really could have gone for more of like an organic nature, that would have overall fit in a lot nicer, because it's almost like there's a hint of like some loungy, like Amy Winehouse like character that's buried in there somewhere, but they kind of just go in the opposite direction. And overall, this track's just a bit confusing. It kind of sounds like it was written for like a James Bond movie, but it didn't get picked. Kind of like what happened to the Arctic Monkeys a few years ago when they released a song for exactly a James Bond movie, and I think they ended up picking Adele. I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the nominations, but I think they gave it to like Billie Eilish or something. But yeah, I don't know. I was just very meh on the song. I thought it could have been a lot better. I give it a B. Next track, Deja Vu by Olivia Rodrigo. Coming in at number 8. It hit the top 10 this week. It's her second single. Honestly, I dig it more than Driver's License. I like the sparkly backdrop of the electronic elements that accompany the opening vocals. It gives the track kind of like this simmering color, or this shimmering color. And then like this "When You Gonna Tell Her" sudden falsetto vocal line. It's very totally Lorde inspired. This track has a lot of similarities to Lorde. I admittedly like the messy lo-fi trash can drum track that comes in like the second verse. It gives the track like this rough nature and it makes it a bit raw. And yeah, I just dig it overall, more to Driver's License stylistically. Also, it's just more energetic. It's executed with more angst. It's more concise and to the point as well. So yeah, and nice improvement. Overall, it's just more interesting sonically too. So yeah, gave B+ to Deja Vu. And this is just a quick announcement for the this YouTube version of the podcast. Since this is condensed, if you're by chance wanting to hear the full version of the podcast, I link always in the comment section the full Spotify episode. There's just a full episode where I kind of just like talk more and like lead up to like the song reviews, where I drop like some announcements of the podcast and kind of like warm up to like what's going on this episode and the tracks that I'm about to review and really what's going on the chart. But yeah, if you're interested in listening to that, go ahead and check out the full episode on the bottom of this video in the comment section. Also, if you want to listen to the music reviewer on your respective streaming service, that's cool too. You can honestly find the main page on anchor.com with the music reviewer profile, or you can just go on really any mainstream listening platform, TuneIn, Overcast, Apple Podcasts. Basically, if it supports podcasts, I'm probably on there. But yeah, announcement over. Alright guys, so it's time for worst track of the week. We always start with worst track, so we ended up on a positive note. This week's worst track was pretty easy to pick, honestly. It's Run It Up by Lil Tjay featuring Offset and Moneybagg Yo. This track, for one, is just unoriginal. It's like they took Lil Durk's aesthetic and just ran with it and didn't do anything to change it up or make it a little unique to Lil Tjay. And Lil Tjay even sounds like he's even trying to rap like Lil Durk here. At least he doesn't sound prepubescent on this track like he usually does on other ones. The Run It Out refrain is quite lazy and uninspiring. Lil Tjay just slurs his delivery too at times. Moneybagg Yo sounds pretty convincingly like the best rapper on this track, and there's no way in hell that's a good thing. Offset sounds like he's a washed up Migo, which is pretty much the case. Never been a huge Migos fan in general, but I feel like most Migos tracks could be a lot better than this, and Offset does nothing to improve the track. So yeah, the track is just pretty uninspired and drab. I give it worst track of the week. Alright, so this week's best track of the week. Honestly, it surprised the hell out of me. Just looking through the artists that I was covering this week, with this being by Demi Lovato featuring Ariana Grande with "Met Him Last Night." Not that I have anything against Ariana Grande or Demi Lovato to an extent, but yeah, they're. What I'm trying to say is like they're fine artists, they're fine vocalists. But this track really was just a cut above of what like most of like their, I guess what you would expect on average for them to put out. First of all, the track does start with like this fuzzy synth ostinato at first that didn't sit too well with me. It felt like a little 80s pandering, but damn is it utilized nicely the more it comes in and out of this track. There's a lovely pre-chorus section that lines up Ariana's and Demi's vocal harmonizations. It's just so lovely when those line up, especially on that moment as well. There's a nice sub bass giving a strong foundation as they're creating tension, and everything is just spaced out enough to like really have an effect. The falsetto runs at the end of like these particular lines towards the end of the track by I think Ariana Grande. It could have been Demi, but yeah, they're just executed so nicely, and they're tastefully put on the track as well, and they killed it together. Like I thought this track was almost perfect. Quite surprised I enjoyed something by them two together as much as I did. But yeah, that's best track of the week. Met Him Last Night by Ariana Grande and Demi Lovato. So yeah, that's pretty much this week's episode. If you stuck into the end of this episode, thanks for listening. Leave a like and subscribe if you're on YouTube and you dug what you heard. If not, leave some feedback, good or bad, really. If you're listening on streaming service, subscribe on that respective streaming service. But anyways, I'll see you guys later. Take care of yourselves.